Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled "Neighbor repeatedly parked in my handicap parking spot. Entire neighborhood hated her." Hey there everyone, boy do I have a story for you guys today. I don't really care to go into too much detail about how I lost my leg because it is a sensitive topic for me. However, I would like to tell you that I lost my leg in a medical accident and was blessed enough to learn how to walk again after I received a new prosthetic and a physical therapy. This story takes place in my residence and it centers around a recent dispute I had with my not so friendly neighbor. The winter months are pretty rough where I live, with snow and ice frequently covering our streets and neighborhood. With the way my neighborhood is set up, parking is pretty tight in front of our houses, but there is a small area across the street from us where we can park. In the winter months, I park in front of my house because the snow and ice make it harder for me to walk across the street. As a matter of fact, when I first was getting comfortable with my prosthetic leg during the first winter, several of my neighbors witnessed me falling on the ice several times. It was pretty embarrassing, but they were all kind and helped me back up. However, the new neighbor I had next door was not so nice. You see, there was a special handicapped spot near my residence door and I parked there every winter. I had a special sign to hang up in my window and everything, and of course most of my neighbors were very understanding and accommodating. However, that changed when the older lady next door moved in. She had begun parking in this spot, and while I don't consider myself as an entitled person, the parking was already limited and she never had a handicapped sign in her window. I had just assumed that she did not want to walk across the snow and ice, and while that is completely understandable, if she had a medical condition that prevented her from walking across the street in the snowy months, then she should have the special handicapped and/or disabled placard hanging in her window. She did not though, so that is already a parking violation. I thought that this was just a one-time thing at first, but then she kept parking there. Before she got in trouble for not having the special placard or received a ticket or something like that, I had decided to write her a note and put it on her windshield. I was stern in my note, but I was not at all rude and explained the situation with my prosthetic leg and how I had felt safer parking in the handicapped spot because of the numerous falls and slips I had in the beginning of my journey. I even told her in my note that I had the special placard for it. Well, she did not like that one bit. I honestly did not expect such a rude response out of her, and it really made me upset. My request for her not to park there had made her so upset that she decided to stick a rude note back on my car. The note read, "Hey handicap, first, never place your damn hands on my car again. Second, honey, you're not the only one with struggles. Who do you think you are? You want pity to go to a one-leg support group? You messed with the wrong one. I don't care what your note said, so you can shove it. But you touch my car again, I will file a report. I'm not playing. I let the office know the crybaby one leg touches my property, I will cause trouble. So to go cry your struggles to someone who cares, because I'm walking away with mine." Neighbor's first and last name. I was so stunned. I was at a loss for words. First, she was extremely rude to me for no reason. Second, she was using my disability against me and practically shaming me for it. All I asked was that she not park there, especially if she did not have the handicapped card. I had decided that I wanted to do something about this. If she were this aggressive at a simple request, how much more aggressive could she get? So I decided that I would not approach her directly, I could only run so fast. So I decided to take a picture of the note and post it to the neighborhood Facebook group. It was extremely petty of me, I will admit that, but as far as I knew, she was not a member of the group yet. I knew our neighborhood had some pretty bold people, and I wondered if these people saw the post, if they would confront her about it. Was it childish of me? Yes, it was. But so was the note she left me with all of the unnecessary swearing and remarks. And well, although she never apologized to me directly or confronted me directly about it, just a few weeks later she had given up on her lease and already moved out. Those who were in the Facebook group had created a buzz about the post and the rude note she left me. Multiple community members had approached her directly about it, and it turns out she was not so big and bad when confronted directly. What a shame. She had been so flustered with all of the negative attention that she was receiving that she told the apartment manager that she wanted to move out and break her lease as soon as possible. And again, she never apologized to me, but the complex manager did and assured me they would take measure to make sure nothing like this happens again in the future. On the plus side though, I don't have to walk across the icy street anymore. And yeah, ripe stars, that is actually exactly what I imagine to happen in a situation like this. Some people are so entitled and enjoy bullying others, but then when they are confronted by stronger people, or in this case the entire neighborhood, then they give up and just run away. Have you ever been in a similar situation? I mean, not you being the person that runs away, but being confronted by a bully like this. Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you could also post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. The next one is titled, Don't Mess with the Underdog. Someone just linked me to this subreddit, and oh boy, do I have a story for you guys. I am still proud of this to this day. A few years ago, I was working in a job I really enjoyed with a team I really gelled well with. There were about 5 of us working on the same portfolio of projects in different roles. And every single team member was just cream of the crop, incredibly good at what they do. I cannot overemphasize how satisfying it was to work with such an incredibly competent, likable group of people. In this job, instead of getting the Sunday night blues, I would get excited thinking about the work I would be doing the next day and planning how we would solve the complex problems together. It was like a series of logic puzzles. Yes, I realize I'm a huge nerd. I promise I also had a life outside of work. The one downside, there is always a downside to this job, was Steve. Steve was not in the supervisory line for me or any of my team members, but he was about 3 levels above us and very senior. He'd been there for years and was tied with senior leadership. Steve was also a mega creep. He said extremely inappropriate things to young women in the office, and he apparently was not averse to being handsy, though as far as anyone knew, that was as bad as it had gotten. The women in the office all knew to steer clear of him. My first week on the job, the Whisper network made sure I knew. Never be alone with Steve. Sexual harassment is difficult to document, and no one wanted to risk their career and put a target on their back going after a big guy like Steve, so he just got away with it for years. So for a couple of years I followed this advice. There were a few instances of Steve saying incredibly uncomfortable things to me in passing, but for the most part I managed to avoid him. Then I found out that my teammate Rob had gotten on Steve's radar. For context, Rob is non-neurotypical and has some minor tic-ish behavior. He is also shy and easily spirals into social anxiety when put in uncomfortable situations. So, one evening at our team's informal weekly happy hour after work, Rob lets it slip that Steve's been giving him a hard time. The rest of us are like, whoa, wait, what? Because Steve never interacts with staff at our level except to creep on women, and we basically make Rob tell us everything. Basically for the last few weeks, Steve has been bullying Rob and making fun of his tics and mimicking his way of speaking back to him. He's also been asking Rob how he can possibly be competent to do his job and implying he is a pity hire. Once he even called him the R slur. It is clear Steve is seeking out Rob for this because again, there is really no reason for him to interact with our team. Rob has been having horrible anxiety over this situation and has had bad insomnia and stomach issues since Steve targeted him. And not that it bears repeating, but just to reiterate, Rob is a damn beast at his job and a genuinely good guy. At this point I am seeing red. We all were. We tell Rob to go to HR, that his neurological issues put him in a protected ADA class, that he could get Steve in big trouble. Rob panics and says he cannot do that, begs us not to tell anyone at work and says he wishes he had not said anything. We assure him he won't say anything if that is what he wants, but we are all very distressed. I leave the bar fuming, just thinking, okay, that's it, F you Steve, you're going down. I cannot tell anyone about what is happening to Rob because I promised him as much, so I start my own paper trail. I start baiting Steve, and I don't mean I behave in any suggestive manner or lead him on, I just stop avoiding him and I even initiate contact myself. I am him through the company's instant messaging system, very professionally and politely asking if a big client will be staying on through the next project cycle, and the floodgates open. He starts sending me outrageously sexual instant messages. I mostly don't respond, but I occasionally keep him going by sending extremely literal responses to his innuendo-laden questions or pretending not to understand something suggestive he is saying. Sometimes when he clarifies, I will outright say, "This is not appropriate," or "This is making me uncomfortable," or "Please don't say things like that, Steve." But he steamrolls right over me. During this time I've also been seeing him more in person around the office, and he often says gross stuff to me in person as well, a lot of it not just inappropriate, but bizarre and nonsensical. "Is it legal to have an ass like that in that skirt?" Lol, what? Every time this happens, I immediately go back to my desk and write down what he said, the date and time, and the names of any witnesses. After about a month and change of this, I compile my creep journal with printouts of the IM conversations and take them to my HR rep. I ask to file a sexual harassment complaint against Steve. As soon as the word sexual harassment leave my mouth, my rep instantly gets the head of HR and 2 other reps, and they go through my evidence with me and ask me a ton of questions. The head of HR assures me they will take my complaints very seriously and asks if I know of any women around the office who have had similar issues with Steve. I'm able to give them several names. They send me on my way, and 2 weeks later my rep formally reaches out to me and lets me know Steve has been let go. Much jubilation is had around the office. It took a couple of months for me to piece together the whole story, but basically after my complaint, HR started following up with the names I gave them, both the witnesses to my in-person encounters with Steve and the other women he had harassed. They corroborated what I had told HR, and then through them, word started spreading around the office that HR was conducting a sexual harassment investigation against Steve. This emboldened at least 15 different women who had been biting their tongues about Steve for ages to come forward and tell their own Steve stories. The worst story was from a junior staff member who Steve had sexually assaulted at a company party the year prior. During all of this, IT had been asked to go through Steve's emails and IMs, and this had not only been used to validate my printouts as legitimate, but IT had found a ton of additional incriminating stuff in Steve's correspondences. Somewhat frustrating, Steve received an extremely generous severance package as part of his termination, but on the bright side, word got around the industry quickly and Steve was poison at that point. No company would touch him with a 10-foot pole. The last time I thought to snoop on his public social media pages, he was listing himself as an independent consultant in our industry, which I seriously doubt he's actually doing, and based on his public Facebook page, he is doing a couple of MLMs, so that should kill off whatever savings he has in short order. I don't work with Rob anymore, but I did recently attend his wedding. He is extremely happy with his new wife, who is a sweet and lovely woman, and he is doing really well in his career. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, have you ever had a coworker like Steve? And if so, what happened to him? Please let us know in the comments or share your own story on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit, which is our own subreddit where you can share your stories, and there is a good chance that I might read them in a future video. The next one is titled, I win, you lose. Some people just like to use their power to bash people and degrade people publicly. Whenever I encounter these people, I like to grasp the situation firmly in hand and beat them down. In this case, I give you a special piece of crap we shall call Rick. Rick is an older guy who has worked for a branch of state law enforcement for many years. He was very vocal about being 3 years away from full state retirement and about his rank in state government. I was working as a contractor doing some IT work. We had a large group to move the department forward at least 10 years technology-wise. It was all hands on deck to prep computers for the incoming new computers and of course setting up the new ones. In my case, as a coder/network grunt, I was being borrowed and more than happy to help. Rick was the only jerk out of at least 300 people I had enjoyably encountered. He complained about anything he could figure to complain about and would go over the department managers' heads to complain. Part of what I was asked to do was inventory their software used, directories mapped, and to copy files to their new network folders. Keep in mind, we did a copy of the data and not a move. When new computers arrived, the network copy served as a way to making sure the data was backed up before it was cloned over to the new system. Rick was livid that someone touched his computer and swore we deleted a file we could not find. I was marched up to his office with my management team and the department's senior. I promptly found his file on his new system, and on the network, I happened to notice that he had newly installed a newsreader but did not say anything about it. I knew if I called him out on it, I would get canned and they would not look into it. Instead, I opened the reader while Rick was bashing me in the hallway to his audience and changed his preferences. Now, the files would not delete when they were read or deleted, keeping in mind this was in the late 90s and the internet was still a new thing for many. A lot of people would download their adult videos from newsgroups, Usenet, by using a newsreader to download everything new dumped in the selected group. Think like a folder or subreddit, groups would follow a theme or were supposed to. The reader would put all the pieces together so you could see the images or video and copy them to folders. I was made to apologize in front of him and marched off in shame. Rick was really throbbing with all of his smugness. I was passed off from that project to just doing a rework of some DOS-based software. I told my suck-up manager that a lot of people were downloading and installing software on their own. My manager clicked that it was work we could be tasked with doing to create billable hours and that he could score suck-up points with. This in turn created various email distributions and policy updates. I also point out that we need something about appropriate usage. Great, the policy also now highlights that any private use on government equipment is subject to the same rules as fraud. Perfect. This helps later because there is no wiggle room for offenders. In turn, my manager was more than pleased with me and treated me golden. Hell, he even bought me lunch. I quickly forgot all about Rick and found myself expanding the list of software that needed to be rewritten by me. This kept me busy and extended my contract. My boss was happy, my agency was happy, and my clients were very happy. Fast forward a few months later, I get back to the office and the bosses are there looking for a coworker. They asked me if I knew anything about Rick's new system and I told them hell no. They walk off and told me if I saw the coworker to send him over. When my coworker, who was an employee and not a contractor, returned, I told him about the managers, my encounter with Major Rick, and tipped him off about the newsreader. My coworker's eyes lit up and he stood straight like a huge weight had been lifted. It turns out that Rick once again had senior staff watch the stupid idiot fix the computer that the tech broke being incompetent. Surprise, it turns out it was out of disk space and would not restart. The tech had to boot from a disk and delete temp files just to boot. In front of everyone, the tech points out that one directory was filling the drive with images. Once he had everyone's attention, he then popped up, opened some images. Adult videos immediately filled the screen, including some very sketchy stuff from what I hear. The tech was ushered out and Rick lost his job. Instead of putting Rick into jail, they covered their butts and terminated him. No job, no power, and pension for you, Rick. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.